Hey, and welcome to the Road to Greatness, where I bring on some of the greatest minds in the world to teach you what they know. Remember that the road to greatness is paved with learning. So get ready to take some notes from my guest today, who is a best-selling author who sold over 200,000 copies of his book, Anxiety, Phobias, and Panic, a step-by-step guide to regain control of your life. He has over 2 decades of experience as a therapist as well as a teacher. And he's a master in taking complex things and simplifying them so that everyone can understand them and apply them to their own lives, which is exactly what we're going to do today. So get ready to take notes from my guest today, Reneau Peurifoy, right? Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Peurifoy.
Peurifoy. Peurifoy. Sorry,
Peurifoy.
Peurifoy. Yeah, difficult name.
That's close enough.
So how's it going?
It's going good. It's hot here where I'm at, but we carry on. We're used to it.
Oh yeah.
Central California.
Oh yeah, it's terribly hot here as well, but I'm just not used to it. I'm just melting away here. But glad to hear that it's going fine otherwise.
Well, when you grow up with swamp coolers and no air conditioning, your body gets kind of conditioned to it. We're spoiled nowadays. Everything's so air conditioned.
Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, Reneau, you are an expert in therapy as well as in the subject of anxiety. So can you tell me a bit more about how did you get started into this, right? What was your obsession? Is it something that you experienced yourself in the past? Where did it come from?
Well, when I was young, both of my parents were raised on farms, and he was in the Navy, but we had about a little over a third of an acre. So we had animals. I raised rabbits and chickens, and we had dogs, cats, a parrot, and we would raise other things at various times because I was in what here is called 4-H, which is an agricultural type club. And I was always interested in animal behavior. In fact, I had my chickens. I trained them so they'd get up on little boxes and do little things and stuff. And when I got into high school, I was fascinated with Konrad Lorenz, who was one of the people that discovered or identified what's called imprinting, how animals that give their first call letter, then they imprint on them as a parent, and just that type of stuff just continued and went into biology and switched, studied what's called entomology, not entomology, entheology. Entomology is what I did as a kid, which is bugs. Anyway, animals behavior, and as I got out, I decided to switch into human behavior, got my master's in counseling, and I often joke I switched from animal to human behavior, which was a step down, but, it's been very good and very interesting. I specialized in anxiety early on because I didn't want to do like alcoholism and those things that are, you get a low success rate and people, keep relapsing. Eventually you get some successes. And with anxiety disorders, I found a niche that not too many people were working in at that time, and people get better. And so it's for me, I like success. So it was perfect. And then I found out as I started working with them, a lot of their personality traits were very similar to what I had. I mean, they're the nicest people to work with, and oftentimes they're high achievers, have a high need for approval, those types of things. So that's how I kind of got into anxiety disorders. And once I got into it, I just found it was a natural fit for me. So I enjoyed it an awful lot.
All right, I love that. And it's actually, I think you're one of the first people I've ever heard talking like, oh yeah, I got obsessed with behavior of animals. I think that's just a great beginning to this story. So just for my own curiosity, are there any good similarities that you see between people and animals in terms of behavior?
Well, of course. In fact, what's called affective neuroscience, which is really taken off right at the start of this century. The last century was dominated by what's called cognitive neurobiology, which is how you think, vision, memory, that types of stuff. So this century, they've actually identified 7 core emotional circuits in the brain that we share with animals. One of the most interesting ones for me is something called seeking. And this is an emotional circuit that in like animals or babies causes them to want to explore their environment. It's what in you, when you get into a new environment, the first thing you do is you check out everything, look around. and you want to explore stuff, hobbies and things like that are often fired by it. So it's that idea to go out and seek things that are good for you, avoid things that are bad. And another really fun circuit is the play circuit. And it's something that, again, I'm watching my great-granddaughter. And it's fun watching her because she likes to be tickled. She likes to roughhouse and stuff like that. And if you watch like puppies or kittens or, whatever, they like to play. And that's how you learn limits. I was watching a video of a little gorilla, and he was poking, the big gorilla. He kept poking the big gorilla. Finally, the big gorilla said, "Enough of this." So that baby like, okay, that's the limit there, right? Again, it's that same circuit's what makes us want to play as adults. And we like to joke and, do things that are fun. So, yeah, so a lot of interesting circuitry between us and animals. And, of course, as we grow, our thinking part starts to control that. And then all the higher emotions start evolving, or not emerging, I should say, like, love, pride, those types of things.
All right.
So, yeah, fun stuff.
Yeah, very interesting. So would you say that these 7 things are like our primal, I wouldn't say needs, but our primal way of thinking of our behavior?
Well, they're drivers. It's kind of like you have the sensory affects are things like hunger and thirst. So you get thirsty, then you get the desire to go seek water, right? So they're kind of like that. There's circuits inside that give a drive, and of course all that gets shaped through your thinking. As you grow up, you learn, for example, anger. Anger is a response to a threat. Now, you learn what threats are as you grow up. And, a threat may be real, or it may be something totally, unreal, such as my self-esteem or my masculinity or my success or my position in society or whatever. And so we get angry over those things. Same thing with fear. Fear is a response to a threat. And so it gets moderated and controlled by whatever you've identified as a threat. And these associations are at an unconscious level. So as you grow up, you get associations. This is good, this is bad, this is a threat, this is something that's going to make me happy. And then these circuits kind of drive you, as that thinking process has shaped those associations, drives you to start to pursue that or avoid it.
That makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. I think I've had that myself as well. I've been bullied for years. And so in some way I saw just people in general as kind of like threats, right?
Right.
Like because of that conditioning, right, of what happened, I started to basically fear a lot of interactions. It's a lot better now, but still, that is something that haunted me for years and years. So I think the things that happen to us can really shape us, and sometimes without us even realizing what exactly is going on.
Well, exactly, because you have an association, and again, it's amazing how much mental processing goes on that we're totally not aware of. I mean, the simplest example is walking. As you walk along, there's a part of your brain that's judging distance, that's deciding, is this going to get in your way, or driving, like when you're driving, you're listening to the radio, you're talking to somebody, and you only become fully aware of what you're doing when a truck comes by or something unusual happens, right? Or you reach your stoplight where you got to make a turn or something. And so the same thing, as you grow up, like in your case, getting bullied, you have lots of these associations that, okay, these types of interactions are dangerous. These types of interactions you want to avoid. And they become what we call emotional triggers. So when you sense somebody that has a similar sound in their voice or similar body language, whatever, then at an unconscious level, you're getting signals that, wow, danger, danger, danger. And so one of the things one of the simple tools that I work, and again, there's other stuff that helps as well, is something I call what's happening, what's real. So maybe to use an example of a lady who had been abused as a child, and she's at a business where her boss sounds a lot like her father. And so whenever they have an interaction, of course, she freezes up, she gets all anxious, and so she starts using this what's real technique. So the first step is identifying what's happening. I'm responding to my boss as if he's my father. What's real is I'm an adult now. My father, he's out of the picture. This is just my boss, and he's a reasonable person, so I don't really need to be anxious. Now, she'll still get anxious, but over time, using that, she desensitizes to him. And you learn to do that with a lot of situations. And again, there's some other tools you can tack onto it, but that's a really simple tool that I've used a lot with people where they have any kind of a post-traumatic stress, which is kind of what you're describing, any kind of a trigger from the past that's getting triggered by things today that are now safe, but they resemble something from the past that was actually dangerous or harmful emotionally or in some way.
Oh yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And I've been doing that, like without actually knowing the technique. That's basically what I've been doing. I've been telling myself, like rationalizing with myself, people aren't all bad. They're actually on my side. People are trying to have fun as well. And so we're on the same team. But still, you're fighting the subconscious with your conscious thought. And it's something that takes time as well.
Right. It does. And really identifying clearly that, why this is happening. This is happening because, and having some specific things from the past that's triggering it, that helps too. It helps your brain to reinterpret and make new associations. Yeah, another technique that works really well are things like something called EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, and that's it's a technique where you get people to do basically REM movements, and we don't really know why or how it works. We have lots of theories, but some of those types of techniques also help to deprogram or change some of those associations at a deep level.
Okay. That makes sense as well. So one question that I would have, right? For me, I kind of knew what was haunting me on a deeper level. But if someone maybe feels anxiety in certain situations but doesn't know where it's coming from, how would someone go about first finding out, like, what is really ruling my behavior?
Well, the classic thing that I dealt with was something called panic disorder. And this is where people would have panic attacks, and a lot of times they would get so bad that they would start avoiding situations because of the anxiety that was producing. Any situation they associated where they might have a panic attack, they would start avoiding. And the why this is happening takes a minute, but it's basically a combination of how they're wired, their personality, and some experiences. So typically they're people that have a reactive body. So bodies are different. Some people are tall, some people are short, and then there's an average height for people. With the reactivity of your body, some people have a very reactive system, and some people, you got to knock them upside the head to notice something, right? They're just not that conscious of what's going on around them, right? And most of us are somewhere in between. And so these are people that have very reactive bodies. Oftentimes, they're very successful, go-getters. A lot of times they have a high need for approval. And oftentimes they tend to be out of touch with their body. So a typical story would be, well, tell me what happened when you had your first anxiety attack. Well, I was going to school and I was working full time. My fiance decided he didn't want to get married. And so I don't understand why I was having panic attacks. And of course, listen to that, you start saying, well, wait a minute, I think I've identified what you had was a stress reaction that you didn't realize how stressed out you were. And so your body was giving you this anxiety response. And because you were afraid of it, now it becomes what we call a conditioned response. You get anxiety, you start telling yourself, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? I'm going to lose control. And of course, that makes you more anxious. And now it becomes a chicken and the egg thing where it just escalates. And so you start unwinding that. The first step is, again, why this happened, understanding that process. And then you go through a process of desensitization. You learn some, coping mechanism, relaxation response, things of that nature. Modify some of those personality traits of perfectionism that's often present. A lot of times they have a lot of should, must rules, things of that nature. And as they desensitize, long-term recovery, one of the really key things, and this is true for everybody, even if you don't have anxiety, is understanding that emotions are messages. And so coming to understand what is the message that the emotion is giving to you. So, for example, like with these people, they'd start to get anxious, or they start to have some maybe pre-panic attacks or panic attacks. And so that means they got something in their life they need to deal with. So what they do is they go through your checklist. How are your relationships? Oftentimes they have relationship issues that they're not dealing with. Or how's work going? How's the kids? How's your life goals? As you go down the checklist, you'll find something, and their typical response, well, this is going on, but it's really not that big a deal. Well, your body's telling you it is a big deal, so deal with it. Set some limits, or do whatever it needs for that situation. So essentially, having a reactive body like that is good, because you have to keep short accounts. As things come up in your life, you got to deal with them, because the more you ignore them, then the more you're going to get that stress is going to build underneath it, because there's some threat out there that you're not dealing with. And so your body's telling you to deal with it. And in general, even if you don't have a reactive body, it's good just deal with stuff as it comes up, because if it's in the background there, it's going to have some kind of response to you.
Oh, it's such a powerful message. Yeah. And I want to go back a little bit to the question that you just asked of, when did this first come up, right? I think that's such a great question, because like everything you feel right now, a lot of the anxiety, it's coming from somewhere. So if you can backtrack to when did it start, then maybe you can find the root cause of it. And that's going to help you overcome them. At least that's what has been useful for me. Right. So go ahead.
Go ahead.
Now, and what I was going to say, it's a message that you're feeling stress or anxiety, right? It means that something is kind of off. And one thing I say all the time is the thing that you fear most, that you're putting off, that's probably the thing that's going to help you get results faster in your life. That's going to help you move forward.
Right. Keep those short accounts. And again, I find just going through the checklist helps for most of my clients, just as we start going through, okay, how's your relationships, primary relationships, kids, how's your work going? How are your life goals? How do you feel you're progressing in life? Do you have any dreams that maybe you've gotten thwarted or that you wish you could pursue that you're not pursuing? So those types of things. As you just kind of explore those types of questions, usually you identify, this is what's going on in my life. And so now I need to come up with a plan to deal with it.
That makes a lot of sense. So one thing that I want to ask here is, how is this tied to, like, for example, self-esteem, right? And confidence, right? Is that something that ties into this, strengthens the effect, is a cure maybe?
Well, because personality ties into everything, of course it does. And again, self-esteem is kind of one of those concepts that over the last few decades has been blown out of proportion. It's part of what we call your self-image. And so self-image has to do with how you see what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, how do you fit into the overall scheme of things. The esteem you have for yourself is a small piece of that. And one of the mistakes I think that we make, especially with kids, is we try to give them self-esteem by telling them how well they're doing. 2 + 3 is 6. That's good. You did a nice effort. Those types of things. You have to earn self-esteem by being competent. And so when you look at people who've been raised on farms or ranches or things of that nature, typically they have a pretty good level of self-esteem because they had to be competent in order to help the family survive in that situation. So they earned it. Nowadays, you look at kids and they take out the garbage, clean their room. That's the only 2 chores they have. And of course, you got to find them to do those 2 things. So I think it's important with both the young kids and as an adult to learn competency skills. That's true self-esteem. Otherwise, you get that sense that I think I'm faking it here.
I mean, I think that imposter syndrome of I'm faking it is always going to be around to some degree. I've even heard the story that Nobel Prize winners would even feel this, and they're after signing the book, right? Yeah. They see like Madame Curie's name and Albert Einstein, and they're like, "Oh, who am I?" Right? So I think that's something that happens at every level, which is interesting. But I agree that you need some competences to really raise that self-esteem.
Yeah, I mean that's what you do. Like when we raised our kids, our philosophy was. We're part of a family. We share in the work. We share in the rewards. So dinner time comes. We got some things for you to do. You don't want to share in the work? I've got no problem with that. We'll see you the next dinner time. And that was kind of our tact with everything. And, and so that it just became part of them to participate in the family, to do a lot of things. I know when my daughter went off to college, her roommates were amazed at all the things she could do, to repair things and figure out how to do this or that, because we had her be responsible. Even when she had to install a phone, of course, everything's cell phones now, but back then they were still wired to the wall. We said, okay, take this wiring off this wall, get a little piece of paper, write down what the colors are, and now go into your room. You can install yours, and then you can have a phone. And so stuff like that. That's how you build true self-esteem, because then the kid really feels good about themselves. And as adults, I think finding areas that you can feel good about yourself in terms of actually accomplishing things according to your ability, of course, is important. And I think this idea of feeling like you're faking it doesn't necessarily have to be. I know I don't feel that way. And I think people that have kind of come to be comfortable with themselves, and this gets back to self-image. I see who I am. I see my strengths and my weaknesses, what I can't do. I'm not going to be a great dancer. I play guitar, but I'm never going to be a world famous guitar player. But I'm happy with what I'm doing. In the areas that I've excelled in, I'm pleased with those. And again, just coming to be comfortable with who you are. That kind of is another theme that I used to have with clients, which I call normalizing yourself. So like with my anxiety clients, it gets to the point where they need to say, well, I just get excited. If there's a big event coming up, I probably won't sleep. It's like on a baseball or football team, before the big game, there'll be one guy, maybe two, that'll puke before the game, right? And everybody just jokes, there's the pregame puke. Okay, that's just his response, his anxiety, getting out. Now he'll get on the field and he'll play. And just kind of accepting that that's the way I am. We've got so many labels nowadays. People would come into my office. So what's going on? Well, I'm a codependent. I've got some PTSD and I'm anxiety disorder. They'd rattle off all these things. I said, so what does that mean? And they couldn't really tell me. They just had a lot of labels. And so I think sometimes you just have to declare yourself to be normal. I would joke with clients. I'd say, talking to yourself is a sign of mental health. Did you know that?
I talk to myself a lot, to be honest. I'm not sure if it's a good thing.
Well, see, and the way I know that is I talk to myself, and I'm a mental health expert. So it must be okay, right?
I would say so. Sometimes you just need an expert opinion, right?
and that's just that idea. You just declare yourself normal. I'm just a little funny that way, right?
No.
And again, that's one of the things you go back 100 years or so, and you'd have people, you have the person who's maybe mentally a little deficient, and people just accepted him. He was part of the community, or this person was a little bit weird this way, or this person was a little bit weird that way, and I think it wasn't as much of stigma attached to things as people carry around nowadays with stuff. And even though we try to destigmatize it, it's amazing how much stuff people carry on because of all the labels we have for stuff.
Oh, yeah. I think now, even over my lifetime, and I'm only 28, but I think that's like when I was young, there were many less labels. And I think that's really something of the last decade where everyone has some condition, right? It's ADD or ADHD or whatever it is, right? Everyone is labeling people, and people just put themselves into a box. Okay, guess I'm ADD. I'm just not normal. I'm going to put myself in this little corner over here. And that's who I am right now.
And let me play devil's advocate for just a minute. Labels are useful because they help us identify what we need to do about things. But I think, again, the problem comes is when, as you just said, you become your label. My son's ADHD. My wife, those genes come from someplace. And it's interesting. He's carved a niche for himself, and he's doing just really fine. And just becoming, and it's a different approach to life. It's a different way of thinking. But, once you become comfortable in your own skin, and again, your self-image becomes one that you've accepted and you've normalized, I think it makes life a lot easier.
Oh, yeah, I can definitely attest to that. That's something that I have to do as well, right? Bullying, they try to take you down, but you've got to be okay with who you are. And
well, that's the good thing about getting older. You just don't care about what other people think.
One thing that helped for me was having a clear vision for the future. I've always wanted to have my own business and to become successful like that. And that's something that drove me forward, where I could even laugh at myself and just one-up one of the bully's jokes. Right? Oh, you're such a loser. You're not even close, right? And I would just make it one step worse and just genuinely laugh. Because I knew where I was heading. So I could be okay with myself, who I am today. I think that's something very powerful. At least it has been for me.
Yep. Well, I think it's true for anybody that's, to be comfortable in your own skin.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that's very difficult for a lot of people as well. because they like not feel good
Right.
enough, or they feel constant anxiety, they have these panic attacks. So what are some things that people can do to really help improve that self-image and to feel comfortable in their own skin?
Well, for younger people, the best thing you can do is to get out of social media. Social media has such a negative impact. I was reading one study in Europe, and they had college students reduce their time on social media by 1 hour a day, and they measured their level of happiness before and afterwards, and they were happier after just 1 hour a day being less on social media. With my anxiety clients, I would tell them, just quit watching TV news. Television news is just all about sensationalism and making you anxious. If you want to read stuff, fine. Nowadays we have the internet. You can go to any kind of an newspaper aggregate or news aggregates website that you like. Spend 15 to 30 minutes, go through it. You can read it. You get more information. You can digest it without all of the emotional stuff flying at you that you get in news stories, and then move on with your day and do other stuff. Being comfortable with yourself, being without a lot of noise. I think another problem that people nowadays have is there's just so much noise in their life.
Yeah.
They don't know how to take time to be quiet. That's why the whole mindfulness movement, I think, is so popular, because it gets people to take some time to just tune out the noise and just be quiet with yourself. Throughout most of human history, people had lots of time to be alone with their thoughts and themselves, to give their mind time to process through. So what are these events in my life actually mean? Where do I want to go with them? What's important to me? All those types of questions, which if you're constantly getting bombarded by stimuli, it's hard for your brain to deal with those types of things.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's a coping mechanism for a lot of people as well. They just get home. Oh yeah, let me put on the radio. Let me put on the television. Let me just grab my phone here. And it's just like we're escaping our own thoughts because we don't really want to be alone with ourselves, I think. But I think if you can do that, if you can sit in silence, you're going to learn so much about yourself, because that inner voice is just going to start talking. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and you don't necessarily have to sit in silence. It's for some people, like an AD son, it would be running or riding his bicycle. But, do something like that. But at the same time, your brain is in that kind of a neutral mode while you're doing that activity, cutting the lawn or whatever. I know a lady that she said she did her best meditation when she was cutting the lawn. She had an old-fashioned push lawnmower, and she just pushed that thing back and forth. That's when she would do her thinking, right?
That makes a lot of sense as well. Like those moments when your hands are basically busy, but your mind is still free.
Right.
Those are some great moments for introspection. So just don't clutter up your mind with putting in earphones and that kind of stuff.
And that's when you get what we call intuitions. A lot of people will get intuitions like when they're in the shower. And what's really going on is you've got the conscious mind is turned down, and so the subconscious can now feed up its answers to you. I mean, I used to do this type of stuff all the time. Like when I had a math class, when I was doing calculus, I would look at my calculus problem if I couldn't solve it before I'd go to sleep, and I'd tell myself, I want to know this in the morning. And I'd have these weird math dreams. And I'd get up in the morning, I'd be able to solve it. Because your subconscious does a lot of work for you if you let it. But if you never have some time to be quiet, it never has the opportunity to give you back that answers that it's come up with.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. But personally, for me, I only had mad nightmares, not mad dreams. But still, I love the concept.
I'm not doing any math classes. I haven't had those for a long time. I do have science fiction dreams that are a lot of fun sometimes. I'm in the captain's chair doing stuff,
But I definitely love what you just shared there, of just taking in the problem, just letting your mind just sit on it for a moment. But you've got to, I think, my opinion, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or right, but you've got to quiet yourself enough down enough to actually hear what your subconscious mind is saying to you.
Well, that's exactly what I was saying. Yeah, and sometimes your brain takes some time to process something. But if you have times where you're quiet, as it processes it, it'll feed it back up to you. And so you will get these, this is what I really need to do, or this is what's really important to me about this situation.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Hard to do when you got the radio, TV.
Definitely.
Doing five other things. Yeah.
No, that's definitely true. And so when you can get yourself to quiet down, right? How do you really find out which thoughts and which trains of thought you should really be following, right? Because your intuition, that's one thing, but knowing what to make of it, right? To interpret it the right way, I think that can be a challenge as well. Are there any tips for that?
Oh, that's a hard one to answer. I think basically people have the ability to hear what's coming up if they just listen to it. Of course, the problem is all the stuff gets filtered through your belief systems, and if you have some real irrational belief systems, what's going to come up will probably reflect that irrationality. So the more realistic and logical, you can think, the more your subconscious is going to work that way as well. So if you're really tied into some kind of conspiracy theory or something of that nature, you're going to get those types of answers back up. I used to tell my clients, I'm just a reality merchant. Sometimes reality sucks, but it's all you got to deal with. So, accept what it is and then decide what you're going to do about it. Life is a series of choices. You make choices that are going to bring you some good stuff or avoid some bad stuff. But, be conscious about those choices and be as realistic as you can and as rational. And this is a problem nowadays, too, because there's so much crazy stuff, again, that comes in through the media, which is why I think getting your information, through a news aggregate system or things of that nature are better because you can analyze it more easily. It's hard to analyze when they're showing you some frightening picture and they're telling you stuff at the same time. That stuff's getting imprinted on your subconscious very strongly.
Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's what I was basically getting at. Maybe you phrased it a lot better than I did. But there's so much clutter going on around you where it's what are my real thoughts and what is my conditioning by how I've been brought up with the media, with social media, those kinds of things, and then that limiting beliefs as well. And I think it's funny with the the conspiracy theories, right? You find what you're looking for, basically. If you already believe that something is true, your mind is gonna go through 1,000 things that you see on a day, and I point out the 5 that confirm what you're thinking, and then it discards the 995 that just reject your beliefs. So I think that's something to be aware of, right?
Right. It's, and that's a lifelong process, what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Coming to decide, what you believe is real and true, and, what's how the world fits for you. It's what we call your existential belief system. It plays a big role in it. My existence, why am I here? Is there something after death? Those are questions we don't think about much in our culture. Something that's part of most cultures. It used to be part of what people would think about, and again, that plays a role in how you deal with everyday life. What's the most important thing? I mean, like when you look at positive psychology, the 3 things that really make people happy are, again, relationships. Comes up number 1 all the time, every study. And again, that's something that we really don't do very well nowadays. People are very confused about gender roles. They're confused about what does it mean? What is intimacy really all about? So that's a big one. Having a purpose is really big.
Oh, yes.
And the third one would be your existential belief system. Again, why am I here? Is there something after death, or is there not? If so, where does my morality come from? Those types of things, all that existential stuff. People that deal with tragedy well usually are pretty solid in those 3 areas.
Oh, yeah.
Those that don't usually have at least one area where they're weak in.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I know in my darkest days, I had that purpose, right? That vision for myself. And that's the one pillar that really kept me going, and that helped me develop the rest as well. So I think that's a key starting point. Would you agree with that? Out of the 3? Or...
Well, it's important, but I don't want to short shrift the relationships. We are relational beings. Going back to the circuitry we talked about, we have what's called two fear circuits. One is the danger, but the other one is separation anxiety. And you see that in all babies, and you see that in all mammals, and that's complemented by a caring circuit. In fact, it's fun watching little kids. If some kid cries, all the little kids immediately stop and look around, and that's that caring circuit kicking in, right? It's part of what causes us to miss people. It's part of what underlies, love as the cognitive emotions start to evolve. And that's such an essential part. So you can have a lot of purpose, but that needs to be balanced again with the relationship, because that's what really grounds us in life. When our purpose has been thwarted, having somebody there that you can talk to, that relates to, and share that with, it just seems to make it better. It's part of how we're wired.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And so for the part of your belief systems, right? If someone is having some negative beliefs about themselves, about their abilities, what can someone do to change that? I know it's not an instant process, but what are some tools or techniques that people can use to start changing that?
Well, it's hard because the person probably believes they're true, right? So that's where having a third party come in, or another party come in and talk, that you can talk to and maybe do a reality check. Somebody you trust who has, and doesn't necessarily need to be a therapist. I mean, it could be somebody in your family who's wise. It could be, a priest, rabbi. It could be, a teacher. But having somebody that you trust, that's got a good head on their shoulders, that by their lifestyle demonstrates that they're fairly well integrated, and then bouncing your ideas off them. I mean, a lot of what I was as a therapist is just a paid friend. I'd listen to people, and I'd be able to help them assess, their thinking process. Of course, I have some skills, so I could identify a lot of the distorted forms of thinking. But a third party usually needs to help. You need help with that, because again, anything you believe, as far as you're concerned, it's true.
Oh yeah,
right?
absolutely.
If I believe the Earth is flat, the Earth is flat.
Oh yeah, that's definitely true, and it's something that some of my other guests have talked about as well. Like, everyone is like, oh yeah, get a coach, get a mentor, get some help, get an outside opinion, because you don't know what you don't know, right? That's just...
And it doesn't necessarily have to be professional. I know that's sacrilegious for me to say, but a lot of times just a really good friend that has their head on their shoulders can do just as much.
That makes a lot of sense.
So and the more confidence you have, the better.
That's very good, I think. And I think that's something where a lot of people can go through this as well, because they're like, oh yeah, I can't afford a mentor. I can't afford a coach. So just someone who's going to be honest with you. I think that's important as well. Who's not going to hold back to spare your feelings, but who's going to, in a kind way, of course, lay it out there. I think that's such a powerful process.
And they're everywhere. They can be at your church, they can be at your racquetball club, they can be at work. You just got to look around for it and get your head out of the phone, right? And that's a skill that our younger generation is not real good at least by a big chunk of them. I mean, the saddest thing for me is to see 3 teenagers sitting in the same room texting each other.
Yeah. Sometimes I see them even with earphones in. Like, come on, you're with friends.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not sure why that mindset even exists.
Yeah.
To me, it even looks and sounds ridiculous, but yeah.
Well, internet sites are designed to be addictive.
Absolutely.
You get that little dopamine push, in your pleasure center when you get the little ring in your bell or whatever. Get the buzz, or you get a tweet, or you get a little this or that, and it's just like a slot machine. You get that intermittent reinforcement going on, and they're very good at
FOMO as well. That's definitely something that's true. I try to stay away from social media as much as possible. Of course, I've got to be on there to actually post content and to reply to people. But other than that, I just try to stay away from it.
Well, and social media does have its positive things. I mean, my son's in Texas, so I can keep tabs on him, through Facebook and things like that. Again, it's just how you use it. It's like anything else. It's a tool that, as a society, we're like an adolescent. We really don't know how to use it yet. So, use them wisely. If you're just mindlessly scrolling, or you're excited about everybody's life, and you're getting, there's what's called the fear of missing out with that young people a lot of times have when they watch a lot of these false images of all these people that are posting, oh, I did this, I did that, look at me, oh, now I look wonderful. they get these curated images and they believe that's reality. So if you have people that you're having real deep conversations with, then that's social media is fine.
So. I believe in that as well. It's a tool and it depends on how you actually use it. So what I want to ask you, right? We've been through a lot about the topics of anxiety, about your self-image, your beliefs.
Right.
So can you maybe summarize it a little bit? I know you're great at making things simple. So where can someone start if they're feeling anxious a lot in certain situations? What would be a good starting point?
Well, start with my book, Anxiety, Phobias, and Panic. And I have a lot of YouTube. I have a very active YouTube channel. So you can go, since my name is hard to remember and spell, go to my website, whyemotions.com, and it will point you over to the free videos on YouTube. And I've got them on anxiety and anger and, PTSD stuff, just a wide variety of things. And people seem to find those very useful.
Can you spell it out for people that are just listening?
whyemotions.com. So
that's
very
pretty
easy
simple.
to remember. So
whyemotions.com, and then the book Anxiety, Phobias, and Panic. I think that's a great starting point.
Right.
And so for my final question to wrap this up, right? Where do you see yourself going from here? What is the impact that you want to have on the world?
Well, it's been gratifying, having a lot of people write to me or let me know how useful some of my work, whether it's been the YouTube videos or the books or things I've done in person. I mean, I like to serve. I'm a servant at heart, and I like helping people. And my big my big turn on is when I see somebody take a positive step that improves their life.
Yeah, that's great. Even if just one person listening is going to change their life, that's already a huge win, at least in my book.
Yeah.
I love that vision for the future of just helping people. And I think that's something that, for at least the guests that I have had on, that's something that drives so many people, just being selfless, right? Of course, you're getting things out of it, but you're helping so many other people. It's not just about you. And I think that is something that relates to that higher purpose that really improves how we feel about ourselves and our lives. So thank you for sharing that. So are there any final words you would like to say to the listeners before we cut it off here?
Well, I don't have any words of wisdom, I think, beyond what we've already covered. So I think just be kind to yourself. Keep a short list of things going on in your life. When you do have anxiety, anger, or anything that's out of the ordinary for you, go through your checklist. Take a look at what area of your life there's something happening that you need to address that you have not been addressing, and address it. And if you need some advice on how to do that, find some people. If you don't have any people in your life that you can trust, then go to a professional. But somewhere, find somebody to bounce stuff off of.
I think that's so powerful. Just that checklist of go through the areas in life to see, this is a message. I love that you shared that. This stress, this anger, this fear, it's a message that something kind of needs fixing in your life. So if you go through all of your areas, you're going to find that. And then don't be afraid. Just put your ego aside for a moment and seek help if you think you really need it. I think that's such a powerful message. Okay, yeah. So I'll just cut out this a little bit and then I'll wrap it up for now. Okay, so
the time delay is always interesting.
I think it's like 2-3 seconds.
Going around the world like this. Yeah.
Okay, so
well, it's been fun being here, so thank you for having me on your show.
1 second for the recording. I'm just going to wrap it up and then I'll edit it out later.
Okay.
So remember, the road to greatness is paved with learning. I hope you have been taking notes on the things that Reneau has shared with me here. And then just apply this to your life. Start figuring out why you're feeling the way you're feeling. Like, what is that message that you're getting from your body, right? So start figuring that out. Implement this into your own life. And be sure to tune in to the next episode of The Road to Greatness. Because greatness requires learning and implementation. So be back next time for more learning. Hello?